When that April with his sure suit, the drought of March hath pierced to the root, and bathed every vein in sweet liquor, of which virtue engendered is the flour. Van Zephyrus ich with his sweet breath inspired heart in every holt and heath. The tender crocus and the young sun hath in the ram his half course ye run. In smalle fowls making melody that sleeping o' the night with open ye. So pricketh him nature in her courages than a longen folk to going on pilgrimages. And palmeres for to second strange strange strands, to ferne hals knoth in sundry landes, and specially from every sheeres ende of Engeland to Caunterbury they wende. The holy blissful martyr for to sake, that him hath hopen when that they were sick. Befeel that in that season on a day, in south work at the tabard as I lay, ready to weden on my pilgrimage to Caunterbury with full devout courage, at night there were come into the hostelrie, well 29 in a compagnie of sundry folk, by aventure fall, in fellowship and pilgrims were they all, that toward Caunterbury woulden ride, the chambers and the stables were in void. And well we were in a state beste, and shortly when the sun was to rest, so had I spoken with him every one, that I was of her fellowship and none, and made forward early for to race, to take our way, and there I yow devise. But not the less will I have time and space, that I further in this tale place, may thinking it a cordon to resound, to tell a y'all all the condition of each of him, so as it seemed me, of which they were and of what degree, and each in what array that they were in, and at night that I would I first begin. A night there was, and that a worthy man, that through the time that he first began to reading out he loved chivalry, truth and honour, freedom and courtesy. Full worthy he was in his lord's rear, and thereto had he reading no man fair, as well in Christendom as in Hateness, and every honoured for his worthiness. At Alessandre he was when it was won, full of time he had the bar begun. Above all nations in Prusse, in Letave had he reached, and in Russe, no Christian man so oft of his degree. In Gernade at the siege ich had he bay of Algezire, in Riden in Belmarie, at Lois he was in at Sataille, when they were won, and in the great sea, at many a noble army had he bay. At mortal battles had he been 15, and 14 for our faith at the Tremisen, in least 3 years, and ein slain his foe. This like worthy knight had been also some time with the Lord of Palatie, again another Hayton in Turkey, and evermore he had a sovereign price. And though he were worthy, he was wise, and of his part as meek as in a maiden. He never yet no villainy ne said, in all his life, unto no manner wide. He was a very perfect gentle knight. But for to tellen yow of his array, his horse were in good, but he was not gay. A fustian he weared a gibbon, all besmattered with his habergeon. For he was lately come from his voyage, and went for to done his pilgrimage. With him there was his son, a young squire, a lover and a lusty bachelor, with look as cruel as they were in laid in praise. Of 20 year of age he was, I guess. Of his stature he was of even length, and wonderly devery, and of great strength. And he had been some time in Chivachier, in Florence, in Artois, in Pircadie, and borne him well as of so little space. In hope to stunden in his lady grace, in browed he was, as it were a maid, full of fresh flowers, white and red, singing he was, or floating all the day. He was as fresh as in the month of May. Short was his gown, and with sleeves long and wide, will could he sit on horse and ferry ride. He could the songs make in valentide, just in ik dance, and will putroy and void. So hoot he loved that by night or tale, he sleep no more than doth a nightingale. Courteous he was, lovely and serviceable, and carved before in his fodder at the table. A yeoman had he, and a servant's namo, at that time for him least a ready so, and he was clad in coat, and of hide of groin, a sheaf of peacock arves bright and kine under his belt he bar full thriftily. Well could he dress his tack yeomanly, his arves drooped not with Pharaoh's love, and in his hand he bar a mighty bow. A nut head had he, with a brown visage, of woodcraft well could he all the usage. Upon his arm him bar a gay brassier, and by his side a sword and a buckler, and on the other side a gay dagger, harnessed well and sharp as point of spear. A crystal fair on his breast of silver shine, and hard he bar the baldric was of grain. A forester he was, soothly as I guess. There was also a nun, a prioress, that of her smiling was full simple and coy. Her greatish oath was but by Saint Loy, and she was clapped Madame Eglantine. Full well she sung the service divine, and tuned in her nose full seemly. In French she spake full fair and fetisly. After the school of Stratford at above, for French of Paris was to her unknown. At Milway taught was she withal, she let no morsel from her lips fall, ne wet her fingers in her sauce deep, well could she carry a morsel, and well keep that drop ne feel upon her breast. In courtesy was full muchel her list. Her overlip wiped she so clean, that in her cup there was no fighting sign of Greeks, when she drunken had her draught. Full samely after her meat she wrought, and circularly she was of great sport, and of full pleasant and of amiable port, and pined her to counterfeit the share of court and benestarich of mener, and to ben holden digne of reverence, but for to speaking of her conscience. She was so charitable and so piteous. She void a cup that she saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or blade. Of smaller hundreds had she that she fed with roasted flesh, or milk, and wastel bread, but sore wept she if one of them were dead, and or if men smote it with a yearly smert, and all was conscience and tender heart. Full samely her wimple pinched was, her nose tretis, her eye in grey as glass, her mouth full small, and thereto soft and red, but secretly she had a fair forehead. It was almost a span brute, I trow, for hardly she was not under grove. Fell fetish was her cloak, and I was war, of small coral about her arm she bar, a pair of beads, gouded all with grain, and thereon hang a brooch of guileful shame, of which there was first writ the crowned eye, and after amor vincit omni. Another nun with her hadden she, that was her champelaine and priestess tray. A monk there was, a fair fortune maestre, an outrider that loved Venerie, a manly man, to been about to be an abbot able, for many a dainty hours had he in stable, and when he rode, men might his broider hear, jinglen in a whistlen, wounds alles a cheer, and eke his loud as doth the chapel bell, thereas this lord was keeper of the cell. The ruelle of Saint Mar and of Saint Beneit, by cause that it was old and some the street, this slick monk lead all the things a pass, and held after the new a word the space. He have not of that text a pulled hen, that saith the hunters ben not holy men, nay that a monk when he is reckless is likened till a fish that is waterless. That is to say, in a monk out of his cloister, by tilke text held he not worth an oyster. And I said his opinion was good, what showed he study and make himself wood upon a book in cloister, alway too poor, or thinking with his hands and labour. As Austin beat, how shall the world be saved? Let Austin have his thing to him reserved. Therefore he was a precursor right, greyhounds he had, as swift as fall in flight. Of pricking and of hunting for the hare was all his lust, for no cost would he spare. I say his slaves ye poor feel that the hound with grace, and that the finest of a learned, and for to feast in his hood under his chain, he had of gold ye wort, a curious pain. I loved not in the greater end there was his iron stape and rolling in his head. He was a lord full fat. Ach loved not in the greater end there was. His head was bald, that shone as any glass, and eke his face, as he had been a moint. He was a lord full fat and in good point. His own step and rolling in his head, that stained as a furnace of a lead. His boots supple, his horse in great estate. Now certainly he was a fair prelate. He was not pale as a 4-pint goose. A fat swan loved he best when he roost. His palfrey was so brown as in a berry. A friar there was, a Vantagna and a Mary, a limiture, a full simple man, in alle the order fro none can, so much of dalliance and fair language. He had a mad full many a marriage of younger women at his olden cost, unto his older he was a noble post. Full well beloved and familiar was he, with frank lanes all in his country, and eke with worthy women of the town, for he had a power of confession, and said himself more than a curate, for of his odor he was a licentiate. Full sweetly heard he confession, and pleasant was his absolution. He was an easy man to give penance, thereas he wished to have a good pittance. For unto a povre odor for to give in sine nan is well ye shrieve. For if he gaf, he durst make a vaunt, he wist that a man was repentant. For many a man so hard is of his heart, he may not well although him sore smirt. Therefore instead of weeping and prayers, men moot ye silver to the prove fairs. His tippet was a farced, full of knives and pins, for to even fair waves. And certainly he had a moor note, well could he sing and play on a root. Of yiddings he bar outrily the price, he make of it as the fleur de lis. Thereto he strong was a champion, he knew the taverns well in every ton, and every hostilier, and tapistere, bet than a laser or a begestrere. For unto speak a worthy man as he, accorded not, as by his faculty. To have with seek a Lazar's acquaintance, it is not honest, it may not advance, for to dealen with no fish poral, but all with rich and sellers of vital. And overall, there as profit should arise, courteous he was, and lovely of service. There was no one nowhere so virtuous, he was the best beggar in his house, and yaf a certain firm for a grout. None of his brethren came in his hunt, for Doravide had not a show, so pleasant was his in principio. Yet would he have a fair thing, or he went. His purchase was well better than his rent, and raja he could, as it were right, a whelp, in love days there could he much help. For there he was not like a cloisterer, with threadbare cope, as in a poverty scholar, but he was like a meister or a pope, of double worsted was his semi-cope, that rounded as a bell out of the press. Somewhat he leaped for his wantonness, to make his English sweet upon his tongue, and in his harping, when that he had the song, his eyen twinkled, and his heed aright, as do the stars in the frosty night.